Thank you for being here. Sandra López Asiya Korepanova, two great artists at the forefront of their professions, and we are privileged to welcome you to the Open Atelier once more in beautiful and warm Miami.
Thank you.
And what we wanted to do today is to provide an opportunity for people to know about this performance and what this means to you. So I'll pass it on to you to talk freely about this encounter between two great artists and two young artists that are bringing something fresh and new to music and to the art. And the public is avid for performances of this quality and this level. So it's all yours.
Would you like to start about the list, or?
I would like you to
Oh dear.
Well,
Well, it's interesting because in my research for the piece, which is not only like the piece itself, or reading the original Jean Cocteau, but reading about how it was the conceptualization of it, and listening to interviews with Denise Duval, who was Poulenc's very close friend and the marvelous soprano, who incarnated more than one of his premieres. And she said something very interesting because it touched me very personally, because she talked about Madame Butterfly and Tosca, which are roles that I've done often and everywhere. And she said, compared to La Voix Humaine, Tosca and Madame Butterfly are nothing. They're so easy. But La Voix Humaine is so difficult. And, you know, I have to agree with that, because for the most part, as a singer, and one of the reasons I became a singer was the words, was the texts, the dramas on stage. But most of the time, it's a great composer and a great librettist, either creating a new work or coming from a piece of literary excellence or a play on stage, and that they are directing the audience with a very specific emotional experience and trajectory, and it all becomes clear at the end, if that makes sense. Either the heroine dies tragically, or there's some moment of vengeance, or it's a political statement. But La Voix Humaine is interesting because she is alone on stage. Nothing happens sur la scène, on the stage. No characters come in, and it is her having a conversation. And I agree 100% that the difficulty comes that we are one voice. You are both the person on the other end of the phone and also my inner emotions. And we are having a dialogue. And the only words that you are getting, the only reactions you are seeing on stage are that of elle, she, right? And so it's I think it's wonderful because each person will also have their own reaction. I think we will all identify with some moment in some relationship that we have had, that complicated moment, difficult, having to swallow something that we don't want to swallow, heart being broken, or the little white lies we tell each other that you can tell when she is not really telling the truth, preserving him, preserving herself. So I find it a really fascinating piece to put together, and that we alone create the entire conversation. It's a unique challenge, I think.
yeah, and I think it is definitely a very unusual type of performance for a pianist. How you embody an orchestra, and it is somehow feels more organic because you have only one diva to work with. You don't feel like I don't feel as piano reduction. I don't feel like piano reduction accompanying an opera scene. I feel like a full-time partner, but also I think it is almost a marathon for the singer to sing that long with such expression and with such a wide palette of emotions and colors, but also she is alone there, and she knows it. I don't think there are many other opera scores that give this sense of ownership. You're the only act. You can do whatever you want. It will go however you want it to go. And I think there's something very unique about it. And definitely that brings almost heroic state to that. Not in terms of a heroine being a heroine, but because you can grasp it so differently, whatever you want.
Could I say something?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Because what you're saying is absolutely to the point. And Poulenc himself used to perform this version with Miss Privat. And it's a version that he prepared. I didn't think he thought of it as a reduction, as when you open Aida and then you'll have it.
Yeah.
So he performed it himself many times with her. And we thought of you, I personally thought of you when this came about because of your encyclopedic type of mind and your repertory. And we thought of Sandra to embody this character because it takes, first of all, it takes a real singing actress. This is not a singer, a vocalist simply. It's an actress who's expressing herself through the medium of the voice. And the voice in declamation and also through the singing. And we thought of you because you express yourself through the piano, but you are not simply a pianist. So I think we're before two very distinguished artists that bring joy and all the emotions through your art, and that's what we need. And if I may say a little bit, sorry to
Yes,
but,
you missed something.
yeah.
You missed something. We met each other yesterday and we're like, you missed that.
So
You weren't there.
I'm so happy that you're really connecting, and I thought that would happen naturally because you're both great human beings and great artists, and you understand the language of music and art, which is what we need very much now. I just wanted to say that we as an organization, the Opera Atelier, we are so pleased to provide this kind of creative platform where artists can come and encounter each other and inspire each other and inspire the public, and the public can inspire you. And that is something that we need, especially today. And this work is very much to the point because we are suffering, we are experiencing an epidemic not only of a virus, but of mental illness, loneliness, and a lot of emotional distress, especially for young people. And when we talk about something so touchy as suicide and all kinds of things, we have to provide an alternative. And perhaps if you could talk about this alternative that we are finding. So it's opening the door to life rather than death.
Well, what I think is really important is that the piece itself shows them, obviously not all, but many of the mental pathways that can lead to that kind of conclusion. And it's very raw. You see the ways in which she keeps leading to this one path, almost like it's an inevitability. And that is something that I think people feel in moments of disconnect, despair, isolation, a feeling that it's in this case, it's a complete, it's a stop. There's not a possibility for a different outcome in terms of the relationship. And oftentimes when we feel that we will never see this person again, or I'm never going to get back to my regular life, I will never be able to freely be around other humans again or connect in that way again. And it points an arrow to that, as you said, to suicide as the door, as the only inevitable door. And I think that it is interesting for people to be able to identify, I've had those same thoughts. I've said those same things, either out loud or to myself. And I see myself here. And to allow, for me, my job is to be that vulnerable and to go to that place so that people see it's not me alone. This is presented in this piece precisely because it is something that is felt widely. And it can be an isolating thought that you're thinking those things. And yet you're not alone. it really is something that is la voix humaine. It is part of the humanity's voice when pushed in those directions, because I think we are innately social creatures. I think that is true. I have children, and to watch the need, the excitement, the connection, and be reminded that that is normal. So that when I have felt distraught, dismayed, isolated, sad, confused as to why I'm feeling so disconnected and upset, and maybe even lethargic, right? That this piece shows us we can all resonate with that. I've been on that floor with her right there, saying and thinking those same things, biting my nails, going, hold back, I really need to connect with someone, I need to talk to someone. And so I think that is why it's interesting to have them resonate with that and then potentially see another solution.
Right.
But we see where you are.
See.
You are
It's
not
a real
alone.
thing.
It's a real thing. That's right.
That can happen. Asiya, would you like to talk a little bit about the Liszt etude, those very easy pieces that you're going to perform? I performed it with one finger myself.
Well, what fascinates me about the Liszt etudes, not just this particular cycle, but practically all of them, and I play all of them as a recital program. He kept working on them for years and years and years. Every single Liszt etude exists in more than one version, which makes them distinctly different from, let's say, Chopin, which is, this is the etude, that's it. But we have an earlier version of Paganini etudes that are, in a sense, a little bit crazier. They're asking for much bigger hands, but they're flashier, but in my opinion, less musical. And so it is really, really wonderful when you research that music and you see the composer's mind kind of rumbling, and cutting certain things out and keeping certain things and developing them, and to create such a vibrant set of etudes, which are, there are etudes, but there's very little etude-ish about them because they're so poetic. They are a marvel on its own, each of them. And yes, they are posing a lot of challenges for the pianist, but it's also a lot of musical challenges there. Despite the fact that the etude, the word etude, makes you think, it's something very diligent, you have to go through it, suffer, and remain intact through the process. But to me, these pieces are more akin to cello poems, and Liszt wrote quite a bit of symphonic poems, and in fact, one of them, Mazeppa, also gave life to the Transcendental etude of the same name and the same motive. And I like always to think about that connection, think about the etudes in symphonic way, think of them orchestrally to see what other color I can bring in, because the more color you bring in, the further you are in the musical realm of that versus just the physicality and awesome something.
I'm so glad that you talked about that, because I was going to talk as to whether you feel them in a programmatic way or purely as musical works. And you already sort of pointed out to your view of them, and so wonderful that you talk about Liszt's evolution, because he started out as this bombastic being, and then as his life progressed, he became a more somber character and refined his music and used less and less, you could say, of resources of bombastic nature, But he was certainly very taken with Paganini's virtuosity, and that caused him to have this. And I say that's Liszt's answer to Paganini in a way. So wonderful.
It is a very interesting journey for a pianist, and for me, certainly it was a very particular one. When you growing up as a young person and you refining your technical skills, your musical skills, any skills that you know playing. You at a certain point, at any given certain point, you're working in improving something, in getting more freedom in a certain particular aspect of playing. And I think there was always a moment when you feel of yourself as somebody who's capable of things, and that's kind of the moment when you feel that I'm empowered as an artist because I have this set of skills that I can use to express myself, and I don't have necessarily something that is actively stopping my octave. Like having troubles playing softly, or there's a very, very particular things in piano playing, and I'm sure in singing too. And there's a moment when you feel that you don't have to push to acquire yet another skill because you gain your palette that you need. Of course, it will get more refined and more refined. But you can kind of like step back and just see what you can do with what you have. And I think this is the same thing happened with Liszt. He was growing up, he realized he can do insane things on the keyboard. He was exploring, and got to the point where it was like on the verge of being humanly possible. And then he felt, okay, now I'm doing something on the keyboard nobody else is doing. Now I can kind of step back and get busy with other things. So later in his life, he started to have less bombastic pieces, and he, last pieces he wrote already as a monk.
Yes.
Almost like
Transcendental.
Very eerie, slow, quiet, and it's like he's looking 100 years ahead of his time. And to me, getting that close with him and having played the reviews on many of his, the sonatas and the fantasies and all of that, pushed me to the limits of what I can do, and trying to find where is that limit, and then finding that I'm capable of doing this, and then the ability to step back and not pushing yourself to your own complete limit, and give yourself like a sort of space where you're not like this. You can observe what's happening. I think this is the best lesson that I personally got from this.
I'm so thrilled that you talked about those things, because as you talked about it, I thought of a concept that comes from psychoanalysis, and they say that the psychoanalyst authorizes him or herself, and the artist has to authorize you are the one who decides when you are ready, and when you are, as you say, that you have all the skills that are sufficient to interpret the great works. And I wanted to talk about a little bit, if that's, so go ahead, Sandra.
What I was going to say, it's interesting to hear you talk about that artistically. I feel that is also a little bit what this piece has done for me in terms of how I've been. Because and I taught singing also for a long time, and my husband's a tenor, and so it's all about art, beauty, cultivating the beautiful singing voice, the facility, the technique, the interpretations. And what's really interesting in particular, and new for me after dozens and dozens and dozens of roles, is that this piece demands sounds and approaches that go beyond the realm of what you might use, that circle of tools, for Puccini, for Verdi, for Mozart, for Strauss. And suddenly you are pushed to make sounds that are relevant for those emotions that are not what we would normally do.
That's no Pamina.
It's not Pamina, no. And it's really super hard in that, because it was like when I first approached the piece, and I'm researching the piece, and I'm reading this text, and I'm reading this text, and I'm reading this text, and I'm reading this text.
She's fluent in French.
And great. I'm so glad. I feel like I wonder how I would tackle this piece if if I were not, because the words really, interestingly enough for me, illuminate exactly why Bunak chose a certain sound or a certain rhythm or something from you that suddenly birthed this phrase, or the way that he rhythmically disperses the phrase, shall we say.
Yes.
Brilliantly does emphasis or reduces its impact as a line so that you understand the way she wants to deliver it. But it's been very difficult because it's really written in a very difficult way for the voice. It's not written with a beautiful melody at all. And it goes into, many times it's really in a strange register because she's uncomfortable. So as an artist, initially, it did not feel as comfortable, as glove-like, or as, you just sing yourself into a better place. That's most of the roles that I sing because they're written to sort of glorify the voice. This is not that at all. And I have to say, I don't know if I could have sung this even 2 years ago, if that makes any sense. And I did Poulenc Dialogue de Carmelite, I guess, 4 years ago now. And that's a tough piece, and it's very, his textures and the characters, it's very hard. It's nothing, it's not even close to this kind of piece. Like you said, it is a marathon too. And you have to trust yourself and trust all of these tools in your box, and then be willing to pick up the ones that you would really almost never use because they must appear, and trust yourself to use them as appropriate, to deliver it musically, vocally, personally, and to expose yourself constantly to the audience. I think that's why this is particularly unique, but it's like you said, to determine that it is sufficient. It's an interesting challenge. I still think of ways that I can't wait until, maybe my voice gets older and I do this or do that to bring even more to the table, because it's this piece that is never settled. That's my sensation. So I love that you're talking about that with the etudes, and I feel like that's also on this side of the program. It's going to be a really interesting evening.
I think that juxtaposing these two works that are so different, yet they are so challenging, each in their own way, the public is going to be confronted with something absolutely amazing. And we're privileged to have you and bring this repertory to the audiences in Miami. And we wanted to thank you so much. And here we have Jacqueline Solorza and Xiomara Ponce, our dear colleagues from the Opera Atelier. Jorge Arcila is teaching, so he cannot be here. He wanted to be here. And I wanted to take the opportunity also to thank Solange Medinian from Stanley and Sons, a wonderful person who has received us with open arms, and they're providing a beautiful Stanley D so that you can enjoy and the audience can enjoy. So we're so thankful to Solange, who's also a wonderful mezzo soprano.
Yes.
And we have to enjoy her singing also at some point very soon. And we want to thank also our sponsors. Sponsors are very important in art.
Yes. And for us to thank organizations like the Opera Atelier, who in a spirit of friendship and love, not just to art, but also to the community. Because I was thinking about what it represents to bring pieces that are not as easy to just thrust upon a community. And I think it's really exciting because it opens eyes, it opens hearts, it opens conversation in a very unique way. And so I'm eternally grateful to you for always starting that conversation.
Thank you. And we're privileged to have you here and to be talking about these things.
I want to add to what Sandra just said. These days, so many cultural organizations, they are struggling to find audiences. They're struggling to sell tickets. There are a lot of things that are changing in our lives, and different people choose different avenues how to help their life work thrive in that way. And I come across quite a bit of organizations that are afraid to do unusual things. And while the music that I get to play is 100% beautiful and like 25th time that you're asked to play Rhapsody in Blue, or something along those lines, you're still grateful for the opportunity to play, and you are happy that you can make audience members happy because they're going to hear something that is very familiar. But with opera, they're never doing anything usual. And it's amazing. It brings such pleasure, because the first time we connected was when Daniel called me, and he wanted to organize an evening of the recreating a battle between Liszt and Tolkien. What? Liszt and you don't hear about these things very often. It was the most exciting event for me, as I also got a wonderful new friend who came from England, Mark. Wonderful pianist. And then we played this program again in Baltimore, at my festival there. And this new collaboration, I cannot tell you how much it means for me to do creative things in the full meaning of this word.
Thank you so much, both of you, for saying those beautiful words. And we have to repeat the pianistic duel of Liszt and Thalberg, because what I want to do at this time in a production with the costumes and full the whole thing. We'll do it. But I wanted to please, I don't want to forget to thank the Miami-Dade Department of Cultural Affairs, the City of Coral Gables, who provided a cultural grant to support this project, and also the recital that we have with Sandra and Stuart Neal. Sandra López and Stuart Neal are going to do a recital, and we're so excited. We're also going to have a Mozart opera, and also I want to thank Stanway Pianos again, and Solange Merdinian, and also the Florida Division of Culture, Arts and Culture, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. And also some people who help us in so many ways that we could not name them all. But thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you on Saturday.
On Saturday,
The
yes.
23rd. Thank you so much.